Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Speedy Messenger on Stories for Men with me, Marcus Pibworth. If you haven't listened to the first part, then I would urge you to go back and listen to that first, and then the story will make a lot more sense. Do head over to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can support my work, and also look at my website. The links are below. To find out information for upcoming live storytelling events and Zoom storytelling events that you can be part of. But now let's head back over to the world of Little Semyon for the Speedy Messenger, part 2.
So let's go and find Little Semyon. So we left Little Semyon just as he was about to step over the threshold, to go further than he had ever gone before in his life. And he travelled for a long time, or a short time, or perhaps an even longer time. When his legs grew tired, he turned into that fleet-footed stag, and off he ran across fields and through woodland. Then he became the hare, and he bounded across over barrow and burrow. And finally he became that little bird with the golden head, and he flew and he flew until he arrived. And when he reached the threshold of the king's castle, he took his human form. It's not that easy to get an audience with a king. So Little Semyon waited and he waited. But finally he did, and he stood before the king. "What do you want? Please listen to me. Do not punish me. Could you do me a favour? I would like to be a soldier in your army." The king looked down at this scrawny little boy in front of him. He could feel his advisors suppressing smirks. "You, boy, a soldier in my army, but you were too young and too foolish." "I may be young and foolish, but I will learn and I will fight as well as any other man. Please, let me join your army." The king could see Little Semyon's enthusiasm, and so he agreed to bring him into his service as a page. And from then on, Little Semyon ran around the palace, bringing things to and fro for the king, until after some time had passed, a king from a far-off kingdom, from the thrice ninth kingdom, waged war upon our king. And so our king was forced to leave his kingdom and march off to meet this foreign king in battle. He needed all the soldiers he could get, and finally Little Semyon's wish was granted. And off he marched along with the rest of the king's army. And they marched for a long, long time. They marched for almost 3 years. In fact, they were only 3 days away from the battle site when the king yelled, "Halt!" Imagine that army behind him all trying to stop all at once, metal clanging into metal. But finally, they all stood at a standstill. The king bellowed, "I have forgotten my battle mace and my sharp sword. Without them I will have nothing to defend myself with, and we cannot go into battle. Somebody needs to go back to my palace and fetch them. And hurry. Whoever does this task, I will give them the possibility of my daughter, the beautiful Princess Maria's hand in marriage. And as a dowry, I will give half of my kingdom. And when I should die, you will inherit the whole of my kingdom and rule together. Could hear gasps going through the ranks. Imagine that. From a soldier to a king, just like that. A youth stepped forward from the ranks. He said, "Your Majesty, I could be there without the army behind me. I could be there and back within 3 years with your battle mace and sharp sword." 3 years? The pompous general stood forward. 3 years? I could be there and back within a year with your battle mace and sharp sword. And pushing through to the front, everyone looked down and there was little Semyon standing in front of the king. "Your Majesty, I could be there and back here with your sharp sword and your battle mace within just 3 days." You could feel everyone looking at little Semyon. 3 days. It had taken him 3 years. That was impossible. But the king waved this off. He said, "I do not care who gets there first. I will write a note." And he wrote out a note. And he rolled them up and he gave them to each of the volunteers. And off the messengers went. Little Semyon took the note. And he walked quickly until he was out of sight. And then he became the fleet-footed stag. And off he leapt over the fields and through the woodlands. He ran and ran straight like an arrow until those stag legs could take him no further. And he shrank down into that bounding hare. And off he leapt over barrow and burrow until those hare legs were tired beyond tired. And he took the form of the little bird with the golden head, and he flew and flew and flew. And after just 1.5 days, he found himself once more at the threshold of the palace. He retook his human form. And he went inside the palace and he found the chamber of Princess Maria. He opened the door. She was across the room and their eyes met. Before either of them said anything, there was already some sort of tension in the air. There was something there. "Who are you?" she said. "I am a messenger from your father. I have come to collect his sharp sword and battle mace. Here's a note." She came to him and she took the note. She read it. "How could you possibly be here already? My father's army must be 3 years away from here at least by now. How could you have got here so fast?" And he said, "I will show you." And so he turned into that fleet-footed stag and ran once or twice around the chamber. And then he came and he put his head on the Princess Maria's lap. She reached from the little table beside her and picked up a pair of scissors. And she chopped off a tuft of fur from behind the stag's neck. She placed it in a red silken handkerchief. Little Semyon then turned into the bounding hare and off he capered around the chamber until he came to rest on her lap. Again she took the scissors and she chopped off a piece of fur and lay it next to the stag's fur. And now little Semyon became that little bird with the golden head. He fluttered around the room and he came to rest on her hand, where she plucked out one of those golden feathers. And she lay that down on the handkerchief. She took a ribbon from her hair. She tied the handkerchief up and she placed it between her breasts close to her heart. Little Semyon became human again. She said to him, "I will send a servant to fetch the battle mace and the sharp sword. And I will wait for you. I agreed to my father's message. There was something between us. Go, I will wait. I will wait. Little Semyon, he liked the sound of this. The sword and the battle mace were brought to him, and off he went. He left the palace, and as soon as his human legs had tired, he ran as a stag. Until he could run no more, then he ran as a hare. Until he too could run no more, he flew, and he flew as that little bird with the golden head. Until he was so close to the king's camp. So close. But he felt tired, and as he approached the camp, he saw a beautiful bayberry bush by the edge of the cliff looking out over the sea. It was sunny, and he could feel that sun beating down on his tired body, and he thought, I know, I will stop for a few moments and rest in the shade of that bush. And so he did. He lay down in the shade and he placed that sharp, sharp sword and the battle mace next to him. And no sooner had his eyes closed that he was out, fast asleep. And no sooner had he fell asleep that who should pass his way but that pompous general on his way. He glanced and he saw the battle mace. He saw the sharp sword and he saw little Semyon asleep. And immediately he knew what to do. He walked over and he grabbed the sleeping Semyon, and before he could wake, he threw him over the edge of the cliff, down, down, down into the sea. And he picked up that sharp sword. He picked up the battle mace. And he headed for the king's camp, where he was soon to present the king with his sword and his battle mace, claim his reward and ensure a wonderful victory for our king. And that, my friends, is where we shall leave the story for now. What will happen to little Semyon? Again, let's take a moment to sit with what we've heard, bring in some of those images into you, and let's together just pause, stop, halt, and breathe. Let's do 2 big deep breaths, and then whoever feels that burning urge to say what is within them. Okay, let's close our eyes.
Oh my God.
What got you? What
Just feels
images?
So betrayed.
What annoyed you? What stressed you out? What made your heart race?
Just feels so betrayed. I'm really hoping little Simeon's not dead, but I'm imagining that he's probably dead. Just betrayal. Awful. All that hard work.
I enjoyed his burning desire at the beginning to he has a massive advantage. He can turn into a stag and a hare and a bird. But he didn't sit back and let someone else do it. He wanted to be the person that does the hard work, goes and gets it. Obviously there's a reward at the end, but he was keen to get going. And then obviously the heartbreak that James has as well. The betrayal caused by the bigger guy, as it were, who potentially gets the reward for doing little work.
Maybe we all have that stag and that hare and that bird inside of us. Maybe he doesn't have such an advantage. He can just see it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not.
Like that.
I was resonating with something that James said before about like entitlement, and it's not just a little sense of entitlement that I have. It's a burning, like all-consuming rage at the world for being such a shithole and a cesspit. Whereas I really appreciate in these stories the sort of jet black view of humanity, and the kind of anarchy isn't really the word, but kind of like fickle nature of every situation, and the possibility for both your own undoing and also your own salvation in every moment. It's like this, you never really know. The balance of power is constantly shifting. I feel like that's a way more honest and appealing cosmology to me than the thing that we have, which is, work hard and you'll be rewarded, and do the right things and you'll have a good life. It's far more earthly ethic, I suppose, than that. But still pissed off that it's like, what are you saying? Are you saying like never rest? Never indulge yourself?
There's always someone waiting.
Someone's gonna fuck you over. It's very capitalist, Sorry about all the swearing, by the way, if it's not
sometimes necessary.
Yeah. I'm a very vulgar person. But it's making me think of the sort of like free market assumptions. If you don't take the opportunity and capture the profit, someone else will. If you don't, if you stop and for a moment, don't be the chump, be the winner. So I'm looking forward to seeing this guy get some divine retribution. Yeah.
But indeed, that's something I was wondering as well. We're listening to the story from the perspective of little Samuel, and we sympathize. And as he's going towards the bush, and you feel that what's coming, like, no, don't lie down, don't close your eyes, no, don't do it. And of course, yes, he lies down, falls asleep. But what if we sympathize or try to sympathize with the general, and you see this life chance opportunity, and you've been working in the army for all of your life, you've been working up, but you're never going to be a king because you're not going to get married to the daughter or anything like that. And then you get this once in a lifetime opportunity. What would you do? I don't know. Playing the devil's advocate here. Yeah. And my God, what a stupid king. What a stupid king. After 3 years, he suddenly realizes I didn't bring I can sympathize with that. Sometimes I'm like that as well, like, oh shit, where's my pen? Where's my this? Where's my that? But yes, stupid king. Also, the way that Samuel presents himself to the king is like, oh, please don't punish me. That's like his first line, please don't punish me. They're like, wow, why would you be punished? I found that a bit strange.
That's true. Thank you, Dominic. I think one of the things that always gets me about this story is that he collects all the weapons, and I always think, how does he hold them as a stag and as a hare and a little bird? But I've managed to suspend my sort of criticism to that and just believe that the monks also gave him the power to do that. But yes.
Maybe
that's the magic of the story.
Of him. Yeah.
So is Simeon that much of a free thinker if all he wants to do is go and serve the king in the army? And why is his calling to be part of the system? I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
I was struck by a few things. I had this image of like onward Christian soldiers marching off to war, this kind of like really just and righteous cause. And I love the shift, in terms of talking about like perspective are we seeing things from. And it strikes me that women in this story are a prize for men to gain and to be traded. And it just feels like they're bit part players, really. So that struck me. Lots of very stupid men making lots of very stupid mistakes, and no one's calling on any other wisdom.
Imagine that. Yeah.
I like these two images there, which are very so-called fairy tale-ish, but also very human. And those are those two images when he firstly sees the beautiful Maria. Although you didn't say she's beautiful, but I imagine her beautiful. When she opens the door and it comes, and you see her, she sees you, and the world change. You make you up. You just make your sack. You make your hair. You make your bird, and she cuts off your hair, and you don't care because you know it's her. And then the second point is that there is a time you need to sleep, and this is in quite a lot of stories there that you as a spectator or listener say, no, not now. You could have slept all the time before, or you sleep in an hour, but it happens. And in the story or in your life, this is the time you need to sleep. And when you need it, then you need it and you do it. So this is the point when you know that what is going to happen, that someone is going to cheat him.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, the sort of non-consensual snipping and things like that. And, you know, yeah, because it's her, I'll let her do it. And, but it's just making me think also the kind of, I'll wait for you, all these, you know, there's very romantic, very classical, beginning to a relationship and a courtship, but it's making me think about compromise and making me think about compromises that the things that we let our partners indulge in that we wouldn't let anyone else get away with, but then like often those things become the reason that we might want to break up with them or might have some problems with them in the end. That level of like, what am I actually comfortable with, and how love distorts that, or how attraction distorts that. But I'm sure that there will be a reason for that pouch. Yeah, we all know what's coming. Or maybe we don't. Ooh.
Wow. You guys went really deep, man. I didn't even go that far. That's really interesting, that relationship bit. Because for me, that moment actually stood out. I love that moment when they meet, the princess and Damien, because I felt that's the first time he's able to reveal himself and be sort of vulnerable. And it's sort of like a antidote to all this maleness that is going on, all the stuff that some of you mentioned, all this war and all this stuff, and she's sort of very, there's a softness there and there's an intuitiveness there, and she brings that out, and he's able to become all his self. And I really liked that. Yeah, I'm sure the snipping has a reason it's gonna come by. But yeah, I did really want to slap the king. Honestly, after 3 years, I heard after 3 years, oh hey, by the way, I forgot my da 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 da. Like what 3 years? Yeah, I had that same reaction.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
no
always
way, man.
phone, wallet, keys when you leave the house.
Yeah, but 3 fucking years. As if you really had to look at this like whatever, symbolic, and these are political leaders and all that. Then yeah, that makes sense to me. 3 years? Come on. Yeah.
The incompetence in authority is what I take the king for getting his sword for anyway.
But I did think on that, even on that point, somebody was raising about why would he choose this, and I felt there is in an old world sense, there's a sense of valor in there, in being part of something like this. So though we tend to look at this now from, as in war is bad and it's part of the machinery and all that stuff, but there is that sense of it's almost like it's a dichotomy, it's a paradox, because there is still this sense of valor and honor in being a soldier, but there is all this whatever else, the language around war itself. So I find that interesting. I found his choice of wanting to be a soldier interesting, and I think apart from the riches and the bread, there is this sense of self pride that he's looking for, from my understanding in that.
I think these characters like the king and Maria. I'm not sure the king is an idiot, because sometimes in these stories, like it's a big weird thing to be like, hey, if you get my mace and my sword, I'm going to give you half the kingdom and my daughter, and then you're going to be king. That seems like a trick. It seems like some type of weird test. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Part of me is not really taking that on face value. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he's just an idiot. Maybe that's how he does his stuff, but like, he couldn't have just borrowed some weapons from someone nearby. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, he's set up this crazy, and now his like top general has gone as well. And he's about to go in. He's set up this really weird, these tasks. I feel like maybe there's a reason behind that. And then Maria has, evidently the whole terms was in the note, and Maria read the note and was like, yeah, okay, I agree to that. There's some, you seem cool. You can turn into animals. I dig it. But she knows now who was the first back. So if Simeon does survive the cliff fall, I feel like maybe Maria is going to take a larger, she's not going to just be a bit part anymore. Maybe she ends up being the truth holder, in the story. So I don't, I think that it's interesting that the story is it's interesting that we can't know the motivations, we can't know the backstory of every character and what they're like. Maybe the king and Maria are in on it somehow, and it's just like, so there's like this whole back layer that Simeon is going through his journey, but there's potentially a whole back layer that's kind of, he wasn't a part of it all, but is now playing out that, and all of a sudden he's part of it now. And I feel like that's just a really interesting idea about life. I'm sitting here in my chair, but what things are happening in the characters around me in my life that I can't see at all, but I'm going to be a part of tomorrow in a week, that could change my life, but right now I have no view into that, so I don't know, just something.
Thank you for joining part 2. I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and do remember to be part of it. If you're listening on Anchor, then do leave voice messages, and if not, drop me a message anyway you can. And remember, head over to my Buy Me a Coffee page to support my work, and look at my website for information of any live events that you could be part of. And then please do head over to listen to the final part of the Speedy Messenger.